black and white on the issues of today that are important to all of us. In this special report, you will hear from important people who are knowledgeable about the subject matter we're going to discuss, so you can keep abreast of the important issues of today. Now, let's go to Dan and Daryl. It's time for Black and White, a show that wants to bring all of us together talking again.
Good afternoon.
It's time to hear from people who only want to deal with facts.
It's
time for you to re-engage in America. It's time for Dan and Daryl.
We just talk to each other instead of talking to a guest. And we haven't done this for a while, and we promised that we would do it on a periodic basis. I want to start off the conversation today about critical race theory. Not in the schools. We'll get to that. I want to talk about critical race theory being taught in the public and private sector, businesses. There's a story in the New York Post that American Express has basically told its employees that capitalism is racist.
Huh?
They're saying capitalism is racist. And they're also saying that they have to change the protocols of how things happen within their company. For example, if you are at a meeting and you are a senior person and you are white and there are minorities in the room, you must be quiet and listen to what the minorities have to say. Now, seems like a hell of a management style to let the least experienced people run the meetings and try and run the company because they have a different skin color or they're a different sex or sexual orientation. I, for one, am just plain shocked. And I don't know about you and the rest of the people, but as I said, you can get this story by going to Google and do a search on American Express critical race, and you'll see the story. I have been an American Express card holder since 1972. I can tell you, American Express, I won't be one for much longer. And I would like to encourage other people who have been American Express holders, regardless of their race, color, creed, or sexual orientation. If you disagree with what American Express is doing, the best way to demonstrate your dissatisfaction is to move your money. So I'm going to move my relationships to somebody else, and I'm going to be watching to see whether or not they take the same approach of American Express of saying that we're racist because we're white and because we work for a white company. Daryl?
I'm hearing in shock. I'm literally in shock with the ideologies that's going on. I mean, it's almost like you've been browbeating yourself as a corporation, and because now this new trend is alive, a new ideology, new philosophy. Well, first let's begin. Critical race theory is nothing but a hypothesis. It's not even a theory. It carries no weight. But corporations and private sector are always going to be the ones to make something real in this country. I mean, in reality, the lingos, the slogans that have come through the years, like "Where's the beef?" "Just do it," and all this stuff, have become a part of the culture. So now they said, hey, all the people that are not of color, you're racist. Yeah, I could buy that for $1. And I guess if you call me a racist and I'm not of color, I have the right to sue you because you just slandered me.
They don't think so. They think that they've hired experts who come in and are training the people to reorient how American Express thinks and what it's going to do in its corporate culture. And if I were a white person in American Express, and I'd been there a while, and I was looking for it to be a place where I could grow and prosper, I better start looking for another job, because it ain't going to happen in American Express. You're going to get stuck because other people, because of their skin color or their sexual orientation, will get priority over you for promotions.
I mean, the question that we should ask right now is, who truly owns American Express?
Shareholders.
And
Shareholders own. I own American Express. I've owned it for years, and I've taken my lumps and I've stayed with them to see that they could improve and turn things around. I was a loyal supporter of the management and what it was, and they went and they're off the rails, and they can't expect to have investor loyalty. The thing that bothers me, Daryl, is that we have in the American private sector, we have a governance structure. It's called the board of directors. The board of directors are elected by the shareholders for the purposes of carrying out the wishes of the board of directors and the shareholders. So the management of the company, the president, vice president, treasurer, and all these people are employed and hired by the board of directors, our surrogates. And I'm amazed that we have the board of directors of American Express agreeing that the company that they've had oversight responsibility for perhaps many, many years they're now accepting the characterization that they're racist, and therefore they have to reorient and retrain, redirect their employees under a new structure that places a penalty on being white, and that there's a premium placed on black and other minorities to the deference of anybody who might be more qualified in the white community.
Dan, this is, I mean, it says American Express, American, and that's one issue. But then, I mean, this approach they're trying to take is enhanced by, I'm sorry to say, people, racism. And I wonder if it was the chief finance officer of American Express, Mohammed Boudi, whatever his last name is, that orchestrated this. Maybe are they being swayed or manipulated by outside activities or within their own company? It doesn't make sense that American Express would do it. It's almost like Visa saying, we're only giving Visa cards to Latin Americans.
They're going to take care of the Latin space, and the MasterCard is going to take care of the black space, and American Express will take care of the whites.
Yeah.
We're going to separate the credit card business by race companies.
Hold on now. I got a question. Now, there are a few cards out there that are upper higher class than American Express, you know. So the question is, how? It's still separation, division. Stop. This country does not need any more of this. Or is this economic warfare?
I think what we have is, if I can go back to another example that you and I talked about off air some time ago, and that was the decision of Major League Baseball to move the All-Star game from Atlanta, Georgia, because Stacey Abrams and the left Democrats were complaining that the law that was duly passed by the state legislature for election reform was bigoted and racist. And so it put so much pressure on Major League Baseball that they moved the game, costing the city of Atlanta probably $100 million in revenue, and a lot of small businesses missed an opportunity to generate income from hosting the game. And so they convinced the Coca-Colas, and they convinced the Home Depots who are based in Atlanta, tell you what, don't support it. So, in order to be politically correct in the woke culture, Home Depot and Coca-Cola and others pulled their support from the American pastime of the All-Star game, and baseball moved it to Denver. So the corporations, including the board of directors, had to make a decision to move their support away from the game being played in Atlanta, principally because of the pressure from Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the Democratic left. But something happened, Daryl.
That is really weird, Dan. I mean, it's scary in more ways than one. I mean, maybe, like I said, we do have a finance person that we can always bring in on this one, because it's not seen as American. I mean, even the corporations are dividing us. What else can we do, Dan? I mean, we're battling.
We have to start talking to our credit card companies and our credit companies and see how they feel. We've got to find out who is with us and who is against us. And we shouldn't be doing business with businesses that are what we as individuals believe. If you do, then you've capitulated to the left and what it is they're trying to do.
I mean, this racism call, it's bigger than just me and you right now. And we're in the hole. I mean, we're in the thickets right now with this. I mean, we got the racism card being played on critical race theory. We got the critical race theory, racism card being played in vaccinations. We got it being played in government and elections. We got it being played. When does race stop? When?
I'll tell you when it stops. When it's no longer useful to the Democrats. That's when it stops. As long as it's useful to the Democrats, they will continue to use the race card.
Dr. Paul is in the chat here. He's like, I want in. I've asked Dan. He's hot on this because it doesn't make sense. It's their
Who's in the chat room?
Yeah, he's in the chat.
Who is?
Dr. Paul Cottrell.
Okay, can we bring him in?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me drop the link to him, and he will get it in less than 1 minute. Where did I put it? Okay. But Dan, it is amazing how we can sit here and we know these topics are real. We know things are real, but they're going to tell us, no, it's a ghost, it's a phantom, it's no, you did not see it. It did not exist. Okay. Like you walking around blind. American Express, racist. They're wrong. They support critical race theory.
They obviously believe they are racist, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. They've been convinced by the woke part of our society who's saying you can no longer operate your business the way you're doing it. You've got to operate it the way we want you to operate it. Same thing's true of education, whether it's elementary school or college or university. The government is trying to dictate, and that's really the bottom line, Daryl, is that the government is trying to dictate more and more of our lives, and we have very little chance to do anything about it under the current administration. I mean, I look at, quote, Joe Biden said on July 11th, I don't think that the Taliban will ever overrun the country. July 11th, he said that.
Yeah.
And now they control 75% of it. And now what are they talking about? The exit of the U.S. government out of its embassy is reminding people of our exit from Vietnam.
And it's looking identical to it. My problem still goes back to the beginning. How can we, Americans, allow this ism, is that a better way of putting it, ism, to continue? I mean, I thought we were trying to better ourselves, become more, we always say, become more cognitive, of life, and all we seem to be doing is messing it up more by letting these liberals dictate our future, dictate our wants, our desires, our means for survival. This is wrong, Dan.
But Dale, the issue that you're not talking about, and I think we should, is that we're in this mess because the liberals have gotten control, slowly but surely, of the education system, elementary, secondary, and university in this country. And as they graduate people who go out into society and work in business and work in education and work in industry with these liberal ideas, these far out ideas, that's what happened. That's the price we pay. And we're, to some degree, Daryl, we're at fault because in the public sector, we turned our children over to the what we used to call the angels in the classroom, the teachers.
Teachers
turned out to be devils, not angels.
Well, it's not them either. I mean, they just go with the flow because they're getting a paycheck. Let's be honest. But I look and I mean I see the. I'm really I'm hurt. I'm really hurt that America has allowed this ideology to persist.
It's because we didn't pay attention, Daryl.
I mean, the civil rights leadership back in the day, it now it's depleted. It's gone. It's not even existing. I mean, they just did. I hate to say, they just brought back Jim Crow. Oh, I'm sorry, we got Jim Crow Joe in there.
Right. But let me take you back to an interview we did several weeks ago with Bob Woodson at the Woodson Center in Washington, D.C. An incredibly articulate black man. Yes. Not that all black men are articulate. He was just exceptionally articulate and just happened to be a black man. I don't care that it was a black man. What was important was what he was saying and how he was saying it. And that's been true of many people of color that we have had on this program in the last 10, 12 weeks. How articulate they are, but they're articulate in the context of talking about what Dr. King believed. I don't know how many times we heard people in those positions talking about what did Dr. Martin Luther King believe and what happened to our country when we walked away, the black community included, to the principles that Dr. King was teaching. Not everybody, there are a growing number of people who are re-examining what Dr. King had to say and are beginning to understand he was a man of incredible wisdom and vision. But we've lost our way because we don't know how to put his principles in a large enough scale to make a difference. And that's what we have to do.
I mean, Dr. King was brilliant. He was right or wrong, kindness over war. He was the modern day, nice guy, as you would say. Yeah, he was a man of color. Okay. But I cannot see how these corporations and these people are continuing what Dr. King fought so hard against. He died for it. I mean, in many thoughts you could say, it's like taking, i.e., the Christian approach, Jesus, his walk, his life, his things that he has done. And you just basically twisted it, turned it around, and made it the way you wanted it for a society that's present, or to keep the controversy up in the society so that people will become like George Orwell, 1984, drones, big brothers watching over us, government.
Yes, I did an interview that will be broadcast a little bit later with a nationally known rabbi. And he said one of the things when I asked him, what happened to our society, not only in the United States, but around the world. What he said was, to me, I thought was very profound. The world lost its soul. The world no longer has a soul. It's purely secular. And without a soul, we can't change. So we have to find our soul again. And that means a rebirth of religious values and understanding, communications, which is what we're all about. We have to learn as a world, we have to learn to talk to each other civilly, without threats and without intimidation, to talk about the issues. But that's very difficult to do. I mean, we have a standing order on this show that anybody who wants to declare themselves to be a liberal and they'd like to come on and talk about the issues that we have talked about on the show,
come on in.
Come on in, but since it's our show, we make the rules. And the rules are very simple. For those liberals who want to come on to Black and White, we welcome you, but under these conditions. One, that you have to be civil to Daryl and me and any guests we would have on the show. Number two, you cannot use any demeaning language, calling us a racist, a bigot, or a homophobe, or whatever you want to call us. Can't do that. If you use that, we will take you off the air, period, immediately. That's it.
That's it.
Those are the rules. Pretty simple.
Well, hold on. I don't know if this person coming in is a liberal or conservative. I don't know. I got to find out. Oh, my God. Buffy. You look so young.
My word, the last time I saw you, Doctor, you had about 7 foot of hair.
Yeah, well, I had a haircut. I was helping the local economy here.
So I understand you're having probably what we're talking about. You just want to jump in.
I called Daryl, and I didn't realize that you were recording. But my thought was to maybe comment on the latest and greatest news that you had.
Right, American Express news.
Yeah. So if you just fill me in on what happened.
What happened is that the New York Post, which you can pick it up online, published a story today about the training that's going on in American Express, and American Express is telling its employees that capitalism is racist. And if you're white within the company, you are a racist. So they're doing all kinds of training. And one of the positions are, if you're in a meeting, if you're a white person, even if you're the senior person in the room, and there are blacks, there's Hispanics, there's women, there's transgender in the room, they get to go first, not you. You have to shut up as a white person. And so they're declaring that capitalism is racist. And as I said, I've been a member of American Express since 1972, but I won't be one for much longer. And I can't believe that the board of directors of that company supported this tremendous swing to categorize their employees based on their skin color and their ability to express themselves based on skin color.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's happening? Yeah, I agree with you. The thing is that capitalism in its purest form is, the law of the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And the jungle doesn't care about racism. I'll tell you, what we're starting to see in the United States seems to be reverse discrimination. Where we whitey, the white ones are going to be segregated and say, well, back of the bus, or drink out of this fountain, or whatever. So we're starting to see,
right.
We're starting to see reverse discrimination. I saw it in the nonprofit, but in a different, at Catholic Charities in a different context. I saw it where there was more of like affirmative action kind of stuff, having a certain ratio of individuals in upper management positions that had minority status, or trying to help minority businesses. It wasn't to help businesses; it was to help minority businesses. So it was somewhat benign what I saw, but things have really accelerated over the years, and now we're starting to see reverse discrimination. I haven't seen it in medical school at all. I haven't seen that kind of thing. There seems to be a somewhat a certain percentage of representation that seems to be of this roughly the same percentages in the population. Latinos or whites or blacks in medical school. I don't see a swing any way where it's disproportional to the population.
Right, and I understand what you're saying, but let me take what you just said about when in the private sector, we had assignments, we had people based on their race or gender were given so many slots. Okay, colleges and in the private sector, you have to have, if you want to have a racially balanced employment, you need 13% of your employees being, they need to be black.
It's like the numbers game. It's what they call that thing back in the day. You had to have so many people that were of this color.
It was affirmative action.
Affirmative action. That's all it is.
But what I'm saying to you, Doctor, is that if you read the article about American Express, they've thrown that out the window. They're no longer looking at head count and numbers. They're saying if there's a black person in the room for a meeting, regardless of their position of authority, they control the meeting. They are in charge. And so there isn't an allocation of black, so many women, so many Hispanics, so many gays. That's not the case. The case is that whites must be enmeshed in their roles and responsibility. That's where it's really different than affirmative action. Is that, affirmative action wanted to equal us across the board. Okay, that's not happening under this critical race theory that they're teaching in American Express. If you're white, you are basically bad. And I did an interview with a rabbi that will be on soon, and I said he said that America and a lot of the world had lost its soul. That's why we are having all the problems we're having, is that America lost its moral equivalency. We're totally secular. And so when we hear people talk about you've got to give everybody, quote, in the boardroom deference to the minorities that are there, and that you as a white person,
Larry's here, brother. Larry, you look good, bro.
Hey, I don't how we got screwed up. I apologize.
My fault. I apologize to you.
No, don't worry about it. I mean, I'm glad you're with us.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a gentleman that I've had the opportunity to interview a couple of times, and he's always been a pleasure. Larry was the founder of FreedomWorks, which has done an enormous amount of work in trying to bring out the truth. He's an author who's written a ton of books, and he retired from as chairman and the founder of that, started a new one. But I've talked to him several times, and he has some very strong opinions about what's going on in our country. And can you spend about 20 minutes with us, Larry?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you.
Okay. Tell us about what's on your mind.
Well, back in the fall, I wrote a book called It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. And what I'm basically saying is get up off the couch, turn off cable news, and get to work. that the country does not have a political messiah. I supported President Trump, obviously, still do, but that he was not going to be the messiah that would lead us to the promised land. He would only be there for 4 years, even if he had won the election. I believe he did, but obviously other things interceded upon that. But what we've seen now is as you were just referring to, a degradation of our ethics and morality, and it's envisioned in our government. What we saw, let me put it in the current context, on January 6th was a realization by the American people that all three branches of government were corrupt to the core, and in particularly the federal judiciary, which failed to grant to President Trump at the Supreme Court level with his own Supreme Court justices, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett, a real hearing on the case that was brought by the Attorney General of Texas, which was a very well taken case. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And Jefferson, who I dedicated the book to, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, was against Article 3 federal judges and Supreme Court justices. He said, state court justices are good enough because the federal judges would become despots and tyrants as unelected, unaccountable to the people, no better than any other man, and predicted that every 20 years or so, we'd have to shed the blood of patriots and tyrants yet again, adding what's a few thousand dead to refresh the tree of liberty. Now, Jefferson didn't want to see anybody dead or hurt, neither do I, neither do you. So I wrote a book that suggested ways that we could wage a peaceful and legal revolution because the country had hit rock bottom. And that was back in October of last year when it was published. Things have gotten much worse since then. And we are now in a revolutionary state. We're in a counter-revolutionary state because the left has seized total control over our body politic and our country. We're living what is in the effect a socialist borderline dictatorship right now, Biden Harris. And the revolution that I envision, peaceful and legal, has now become a counter-revolution because these people are in control. They literally have a noose around our neck. Starting point for the discussion. But in my book, I suggest things to take our legal system back as our founding fathers did when King George III took it away and brought it back to London, England. Justice Scalia, in 1992, in the case United States versus Williams, found on behalf of the entire court that the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the three branches of government. We have the right to indict, to try, to seek convictions, to sentence, and to mete out those sentences. We even have the right of citizen's arrest. In California, the most leftist of all states, there's a statute that says if you know of somebody committing a felony, as a citizen, you can arrest them and turn them over to authorities. I'm suggesting that the rank corruption, which is never addressed by either Democrats or Republicans, the Democrats are pure evil, the Republicans are simply corrupt. Nobody was held accountable even during the Trump administration by the Justice Department. That we now need to have to take matters into our own peaceful and legal hands. And that I believe that law enforcement in this country, which has been abused, assaulted, battered, killed, somebody was killed just this week, a policeman in Chicago, Illinois, I believe they're ready to act. Sentence them, mete out the sentences, and let's get some accountability in this country. And let's look at Biden. Now, for many weeks, we're in our 16th session, which will resume in early September when the summer vacation is over. The jurors are now, taking their vacation. But we indicted Biden for bribery from communist China, from Ukraine, Russia. It's not in dispute that he laundered millions of dollars through his son Hunter into the family's coffers while he was vice president. And he is bought and paid for by the butchers of Beijing. You want to know why we don't do anything with regard to China and what's happened? Our president is owned by the Chinese. Trump didn't do anything either. He wasn't owned by the Chinese. But the fact is that the American people now need to stand up for themselves. And one way we can do that is citizens' grand juries. Another way, and I'm wearing a hat which commemorates what we did, here at the Visitor Center of Independence Hall, we held a Third Continental Congress. I brought in very distinguished delegates, speakers and delegates people like Alan Keyes, Ambassador Alan Keyes, people like Armstrong Williams, black conservative, people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio. You can see it at freedomwatchusa.org. We are debating whether we need to declare independence again because we don't have a government that represents us. And, you know, look back at the Declaration of Independence from the Second Continental Congress, where it says, when in the course of human events, the sovereign, the rulers no longer represent the people have a right under the laws of nature and nature's God to alter or abolish that government and to form a new government by and for the people with equal rights for everyone in pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. That's a paraphrase of what Jefferson and his colleagues wrote, or founding fathers. I'm suggesting that we consider taking the Capitol and putting it back in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. We don't need all these buildings that look like Disney World in Washington, D.C. I mean, we're American. We're not Greek, okay? And let's start over again. And those honest people, if there are any in our current government, are invited to join us. We will be peaceful and legal, but we need to go our own way. And we need more political parties. The Republican Party is worthless. They are not in opposition to what the Democrats are doing. And look at what they're doing. You know, COVID-19 is being used as an excuse to put a stranglehold around the American people, to impose a dictatorship. They are bankrupting the country with huge amounts of spending, driving up inflation, giving people free money so they don't work, so companies can't even continue to do business. They are using the Justice Department as their own private Gestapo for anybody that was in Washington peacefully on January 6th in support of President Trump. Now, those who committed crime should be held accountable, but the overwhelming majority of people were there peacefully. I brought a class action in the Central District of California for an individual, black actor, who was there peacefully, who had his house broken into at 5:45. He was handcuffed in front of children. He asked to talk to a lawyer. He was denied right of counsel. He was interrogated, and then they seized his computer and his cell phone, which he needs to do business in Hollywood. It's a class action for all the American people. And then on top of that, you have these federal judges in Washington, D.C., Democrat and Republican, one of which I used to admire, Royce Lamberth, and made good decisions for me when I ran Judicial Watch, but has gone native since. He's thrown his lot in with everybody else, telling people that have been arrested. There's been over 700 arrested. I think about 500 indicted. They are being denied bail on the pretext that President Trump is still out there propagating the big lie, so they'll commit more acts of violence, which they never committed in the first place, many of them, and they're going to rob. We see right now in this country, I know I'm rambling a little bit here, we see the beginning of what we saw in the Third Reich in Germany. We see a secret police going out trying to quell all dissent. We see that many aspects of society, all aspects, whether it's labor unions, whether it's sports leagues, whether it's corporations, whether it's academia, throwing their lot with Biden and Harris, who are the stooges of the left, who are bent on turning this country into a socialist communist gulag. That's where we're headed. And who propped up Hitler? It was the industrialists, it was academia, it was the scientists, it was all aspects of society. It was Mercedes, BMW, Lights, and Deutsche Bank, which actually financed the concentration camps. So what you see here is these entities throwing their lot with these socialists, with these communists, with these radicals of all stripes, because they think the favors are going to be returned to them in the form of higher profits, stuffing profit in, money into their pockets. Big tech, they're part of it. It is a frightening situation. And therefore, the book that I wrote, It Takes a Revolution, and our Third Continental Congress, our citizens' grand juries, are just 3 ways that we can try to peacefully and legally reclaim our country. It's already about 90% gone. We're on our back grasping for air. We're sitting on the deck of the Titanic listening to music as the ship of state has hit rock bottom, and the American people better wake up before it's too late. And then one last thought. is that our founding fathers, against all odds, invoked the divine providence of God, the Father and the Son. I'm a Jewish Christian, by the way, so I'm Messianic. And it's only with God's help and guidance and divine righteousness that we can, save this country. But if we don't help ourselves, God is not going to come to our defense. We'll go the way of other ancient civilizations, which have self-destructed over time. And we are virtually there now. When a man is no longer a woman, and when a woman is no longer a man, and you get to decide what sex you are, and then you can teach kids to become transsexuals because they come back from school saying, gee, we think it's neat. And it's okay. You now have to take them to a psychologist and teach them how to be a transsexual. You're in serious trouble. I mean, just one example of how the whole Judeo-Christian value system in this country has been trashed. And these people deserve, whether you're gay, lesbian, transgender, you deserve to live your life and be left alone and be respected. But don't push it on other people. Don't push it on kids. Don't push, the lack of ethics and morality on this country. It's like the devil has taken control of this country. So it's time to rise up. And
Actually, Larry,
do something.
I've written a couple of pieces that it isn't the devil that's taken over the country. It's the Jezebel. The Jezebel from Scripture, who's taken control of the country. I have one question for you, Larry, then I want to bring in my good friend and partner, Daryl.
Sure.
Larry, I'm extremely disturbed that the validity of the Supreme Court has been negated in the last 2 weeks, when the Supreme Court ruled some time ago that the CDC did not have the authority to institute rent control and to postpone the payments of rent. So they declared that procedure to be unconstitutional. And yet the Biden administration last week through the CDC said, well, we don't really care what the Supreme Court said, we're going to do it anyway. At that moment in time, the Supreme Court lost its power.
Well, it gets worse. Just today, a Trump-appointed federal judge, Dabney Friedrich, that I've been in front of, a complete hack, ruled that Biden could do exactly that and defied the Supreme Court. And see, this is in my book. I have in my book my experience with these federal judges, because they are in principle our most important public servants, but they're the most compromised and corrupt. And that's why Jefferson said, as unelected, unaccountable to the people, they would become despots and tyrants. Trump didn't know who he appointed. They were put in front of him by Republican lobbyists, American Conservative Union, Federalist Society, others. Sign here, stamp here. Even his own judges threw him under the bus. And what do? How do you avoid a bloody revolution if you don't have a way to resolve your disputes peacefully in court? And as a lawyer, I take particular offense to that.
Daryl,
I just had my mouth full, and I'm in shock because there's someone else out there that actually thinks. I mean, they have knowledge to go along with exactly what they're speaking on, and he's 100% correct. It's hard for me to go any deeper, Dan. I'm in shock here because he told the truth, and brother, I gotta say, Larry, you hit it on the spot. My one question, to keep it simple: what can we do as Americans? Our First Amendment's being destroyed. Our Second Amendment's getting ready to be swept out from under us. That will kill off the First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, and all these other ones. We're losing our civil liberties. We're looking like George Orwell and the Orwellian philosophy of having Big Brother looking out for us. And you remember, former President Reagan said, those scary words are, "I'm the U.S. government and we're here to help you." Well, this man, Biden, is not even saying he's going to help us. He hasn't said anything. In reality, he's sitting back with his finger in his mouth and wondering what he's going to have for breakfast or something. I don't know what the man's thinking.
Yesterday, he was filmed wandering around the White House lawn, not knowing where he was going. It's scary.
It's scary. Now, why haven't they dropped the 25th Amendment on Biden?
Yeah. Well, and look at what he's done with the open borders and allowing people to come in that are drug traffickers and human traffickers, and then allowing COVID to come in to this extent. God knows what this Delta variant is. It may not even be COVID. It may be something worse. They don't tell us. They're withholding information from us what this truly is. And he should be impeached. But they've never impeached any president up there in Capitol Hill because it's all one big club. And how many emails do you get every day from the Republican Party asking for money? What have they done for us? How have they served as an opposition after all these years? They couldn't reform Obamacare. They couldn't balance the budget when they controlled the government. You know, it's the National Football League. It's the American League and the National League, and it's all part of the same league. And they're making money hand over fist and acquiring power. And the American people be damned. We're left to eat crumbs. It reminds me of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, you know, at Versailles, who's told the French people, after me, après moi le déluge. I'm a French major from college. After me, the flood. In other words, after me, I don't give a crap what's going to happen to France. And we know what happened to Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Okay, I'm not suggesting that, okay? But the French people eventually rose up. It started on July 14, 1789 at the Bastille. And they were taken away to the place of the Concorde, and we know what happened. We don't want to see that. But that's where we're headed if this continues, because there's going to be a violent reaction.
You know,
Dr. Paul, do you have a question?
Yeah, I want to say, Dr. Paul, I know you were sitting there deep thought, because this man brought up, I can't argue with him. Your turn, Dr. Paul.
I think that we are losing our moral compass, our true north in this country. And it's something that you and I, Daryl, you know, talked at length when I was outside of the country, and that was the brick, the family unit is being eroded. You know, a big part of it is socialistic policies, socialism, you know, eroding the family unit. And, you know, we've lost religion, you know, that true north perspective, no matter what your religion may be. So we're losing our way in this country. Now the question is, can we go back and, you know, reboot America? I don't know. We may have passed the Rubicon. I am very concerned about the fast-pacedness of the erosion of our civil liberties during this COVID-19 crisis. It is accelerating. I live in New York City, and we have these vaccine kind of passport apps that are on the iPhone and Android, where establishments will be scanning you at the door to allow you to get in. Corporations are having self-check type apps, or they may even just piggyback off of the Apple app. But the bottom line is that we are losing freedom of movement. You hear that there's talk about domestic flights where you may have to prove that you're vaccinated. You know, definitely international flights, it's moving in that direction. So, you know, where are the lawyers? You know, I haven't heard any lawyers, you know, speak too much about what I coined as the Biopatriot Act. See, I put in this whole crisis in the context that we've been hit. And and through that aftermath of being hit, there were policies that were instituted in Congress to erode our civil liberties. For 9/11, it was the Patriot Act. For COVID-19, it's the Biopatriot Act. And it's not going to be wrapped up in a bow saying Biopatriot Act, but you're seeing these elements in stimulus packages or infrastructure packages where you're starting to see the erosion. It's slow. This is like a slow 9/11. 9/11 was very kinetic and fast. COVID-19 is a slow rollout. And it's just, and people have cognitive dissonance. They have goldfish memory, and it's easy to control. So from my perspective, if we don't galvanize and say, it's about our constitutional freedoms, soon we're going to go past the Rubicon, and we're not going to be able to reboot the country. And we will be the declining empire. We may be seeing the beginnings of the decline of the U.S. hegemonic power and the beginnings of a 21st century China. I think that, so this is, yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, but it's going for, the empire for the UK took a while for it to really disintegrate, right? I mean, there's still a player on stage, the international stage, but nowhere near what they were 100 years ago or 150 years ago. So we're starting to see that now for us. We've probably overreached. We've gotten far too much debt, been in wars that we should never have been in for way too long, trillions of dollars spent, more trillions of dollars being spent because of COVID and infrastructure. So I'm seeing basically, that shine, that American shine has been tarnished now.
So we've got about 5 minutes. Yeah. So can you react to what Dr. Paul was saying there?
No, I think he's right, but it's even more severe than that.
Yeah.
The problem here is the internal rot in our ethics and morality. It was John Adams who said that it doesn't matter how many times you change your rulers or forms of government, without ethics, morality, and religion, you will not have a lasting liberty. And yes, I mean, we've overspent for a lot of different things. We've done this or that. But what do we do from here? It's not enough to watch Sean Hannity on Fox News and hear him say, and the Democrats say we're throwing Granny over the cliff, and to be entertained. That's the subtitle of my book, Forget the Scandal Industry. That we have to rise up. What are we going to do affirmatively to take it back? Make no mistake about it. That's a phrase that Richard Nixon used to use, ironically. We are in a war with the left. One side is going to win, one side's going to lose. We are losing badly right now. I mean, they have total control of this country. And it's a full court press to destroy everything about this country, whether it's taking total control with COVID-19, which is going to get worse and worse, obviously. This isn't going away for a long time. Whether it's bankrupting the country and creating people with an incentive not to work so corporations can't function. Whether it's using our Justice Department as a private Gestapo to quell all dissent, much less big tech. You can go on and on and on. Whether it's, allowing the country to be overridden with illegal aliens that are going to vote Democrat, but into the future, and to have an electoral system which clearly is fraudulent in and of itself with all these paper ballots and everything else. But the worst thing is, in my opinion, that we are trashing the Judeo-Christian values that we were founded upon. And I use the transgender thing not because I dislike transgenders. I don't dislike them. But what I'm saying is, I turned on NPR last weekend by accident. I was listening to a radio station that went out of range, and they were right next to it. And there's this person on there, along with the host, saying that, if your kid went to school and comes back and says, I want to be a transgender, I'm not kidding. You should take him to a psychologist and allow him to be turned into a transgender. I never saw one transgender when I was a kid. I didn't even know what it was. And this is the permissiveness in society. And then, of course, abortion, killing millions and millions of the unborn. So you got to ask yourself this question. Are we going through this because God, frankly, excuse the French, is pissed off? I mean, he's done it many, many times, destroyed many civilizations that have not adhered to his word. If you go to the old book of Isaiah, it says that God is going to use the counselors and the judges to restore the tarnished city to the faithful city. Well, and that's the thesis of my book. We don't have the judges to do it anymore. And the moral fiber of this country is being destroyed from within. There's no such thing as a man or a woman. Decide what race you are just by going into the registrar and registering whatever you want to be. There's no guideposts for this country to function anymore, and we become an irreligious, atheist society by and large. So you have to, again, ask yourself this question. God sent to force the Pharaoh to let Moses leave with his people. And he sought the promised land. It took him 40 years to find it. Is this COVID-19? Was it sent to send a message to this country that we better wake up in the rest of the world? And we don't have 40 years to find the promised land. So when Mark Levin writes his book, American Marxism, is one example. He's already sold 1 million copies. He's telling us what we already know. But, I bought a copy myself. But I read the back of it. He has no solution. It's protest, boycott, and complain. Well, we better do more than that. So that's what I tried to write in my book. It's complimentary. Read Mark's, read mine as well. But we need to do something affirmative right now. We can't wait around for this country to go down the drain totally.
Right. And,
we all three of us jumping in there.
I just wanted to, to mention that, I brought up this concept about a few months ago. And this was the letter of grievance to Congress. Mm-hmm. And it's similar to the idea of a Declaration of Independence. We ask for Congress to go back to, roll back some of these policies that have eroded these pillars of our society.
Yeah.
The problem is that what's really going to happen is that you have the lobbying group and you have these politicians that have hubris. They're not going to listen to the voter. And the letter of a grievance will be just put into a ball and thrown into the trash. But we have to get organized and have leaders that draft the letter of grievance to Congress. But there has to be teeth in that document. Well, the teeth is the regulated militia. So we have a mechanism within our Constitution that seems to me to suggest that when you have representative government that's not representing you, and you ask for grievance, then you are laying the foundation to say, you know what, you're not listening to us, we're organized, we're protected, and we are no longer going to be taxed. And so I think that I agree with you, there needs to be some kinetic. We got to stop talking about the info war, it's just talk. There needs to be kinetic in this movement. But it also has to be run by intellectuals, not a bunch of barbarians. We need to find what was that secret sauce during the revolution. There seems to be quite a few intellectuals that were helping with the drafting of this country. Now there's, we can talk for probably an hour and a half just on that topic alone. But the thing is that we need a letter of grievance and teeth behind the letter of grievance with well-regulated militias. And then we start the conversation with Congress that we go back. I use the term go back to a pre-9/11 day because from my generation, it seems as though a lot of this crazy stuff with the erosion of our civil liberties on top of this, this social issue that you're talking about with the family unit and religion. To me, the delineation is 9/11. Older generations will delineate it farther back. But, we need that letter of grievance that say, this institutionalization that's taking place that's eroding the family, eroding our constitutional freedoms, needs to stop, and we need to go back, not just stop, but needs to go back to a certain time period. If that doesn't happen, there's no taxation. We're no longer going to be part of the taxation. And then there's that force. I find our Achilles heel for our country is the bond market. If you stop the funding mechanism for the bond market, then it creates such a turmoil that we would have the power then. So we need to get a little bit stronger, get a little bit more organized, and present a document.
And that was the basis for the Third Continental Congress, and I hope that you'll join us because we're continuing it through Zoom, bringing together learned people, not crazy people, but people who actually want to constructively, peacefully, legally take action. It's not enough just to say, okay, American Marxism, okay, now we're just going to protest, okay? We have to have a plan.
Right,
And,
exactly.
How can I sign up? I'm ready to sign up right now. Right now. How do I sign up for the Congress? I want to listen. If people are really doing something, I will be there.
Go to freedomwatchusa.org. Freedomwatchusa.org. I also formed another group with Sheriff Joe Arpaio called americassheriff.org.
I love Sheriff Joe.
To protect the police so we can reduce some of this crime and this violence that's going on in this country. We've already brought lawsuits for police in Philadelphia and are going to be spanning out throughout the country. So these are the kinds of things that we need to do. But the Third Continental Congress is key. I'm wearing a hat, okay? Third Continental Congress is that, what we're talking about is coming up with an action plan that is not violent, but which is peaceful, but which will protect us if we go our own way. And we do need to go our own way. These people do not represent the American people anymore. They represent themselves. Go to Washington these days. Look at the wealth. Look at the building. It's obscene what they do. I spent, over 30 years in Washington. I was in the Justice Department, once proud to be there. And, when I was there going to work, I'd see people come in, and even in the Justice Department, they spend the first 2 hours with coffee and donuts reading the newspaper. We don't need all these people, notwithstanding the fact that they're working against our interests. So this is the time to make it a move. Otherwise, in a matter of months, this country's going to be gone. A matter of months.
I want to thank Larry and Dr. Paul for their contribution today. Daryl, close it out.
Thank you for joining us today for the special report from Black and White. If you missed any of this show, go to blacksandwhites.us, click on the archive section, and you can hear this show and many others. Thanks for joining us on Black and White, where America speaks.